I love Yellowstone. There's no other place like it on the whole planet. The beautiful landscapes, the dramatic hydrothermals, lots of animals. Fishing's damn good too. How did all this come to be? It all started 2.1 million years ago with 3 huge eruptions from the Yellowstone volcano that ejected 600 cubic miles of ash and created a caldera that was 1,300 square miles in area, large enough to swallow all of Washington, D.C. and all of those suburbs. It spread ash over most of the United States, all the way from Los Angeles to New Orleans. There is a large magma chamber called a hotspot just under the surface of Yellowstone. It is responsible for the eruptions and also for the thermals that you know. It is also responsible for Yellowstone having 2/3 of the world's geysers. The volcano is still very active and will probably have a large eruption someday. I would like to show you some of my favorite thermals and animals. Let's start with the thermals. Yellowstone was originally declared a national park to protect its unique thermal features. There are a lot of different kinds of thermals, ranging from fumaroles to mud pots to hot and boiling pools, and of course to geysers. All of these features need 2 things: water and hot magma near the surface. Let's look at some of the thermals I think are interesting and unique. Let's start with the mud pots. Mud pots are acidic hot springs with a limited amount of water. I think the most dramatic are these at the artist paint pots. Then there are the colorful hot pools. This is the beautiful Morning Glory pool. The brilliant colors are from thermophiles, which are heat-loving microorganisms such as bacteria. In fact, most of the hot water colors you see in Yellowstone are cyanobacteria, not algae. It is yellow-green at the center in the hotter part of the pool and changes to orange in the cooler edges and runoffs. The cyanobacteria can withstand temperatures up to 167 degrees Fahrenheit. You can also see these colorful cyanobacteria mats here at Mammoth Hot Springs. The other interesting form you find here is filamentous bacteria. The thread-like bacteria form chains which spread into mats. They live on the hydrogen sulfide gas from the vents, unlike the cyanobacteria, which live on photosynthesis. If it were not for the filamentous bacteria, the cyanobacteria would be killed by the hydrogen sulfide. I think the most dramatic hot pools are at Midway Geyser Basin. Excelsior Geyser is now a huge hot pool measuring 200 by 300 feet, producing over 4,000 gallons of hot water every minute. Nearby Grand Prismatic Spring is nearly 370 feet in diameter, 3rd largest in the world. The steam rising off this huge spring often creates its own spectacular rainbow. The runoff of terraces and reflections from the spring are also beautiful. Although not technically geysers, spouters bubble constantly. Yellowstone is covered with them. There are some really interesting shapes in some of the old, largely extinct geysers. This is Plume Geyser. It erupts about every hour with multiple bursts. Wait, 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 and here it goes again. Now let's take a look at my favorite 5 big-name geysers in the Upper Geyser Basin. This is Riverside Geyser. It is one of my favorites. I like it especially because of the way it shoots out over the river. There aren't many geysers that do that. This is Castle Geyser. It has what they call a center cone. It is one of the largest center cones in the world. And by its size, you can tell that it's a very old center cone. The silica minerals have been building up actually over thousands of years. And it turns out that this is a much older geyser than most of the other geysers we've been seeing around here. Walking around the geyser basin requires some caution, as you will often pass quite close to some of the Yellowstone animals. Grand Geyser is the tallest predictable geyser in the world. It erupts with powerful bursts rather than a continuous flow like Old Faithful. The eruption of Grand starts with Turbine Geyser to its left. Then the big boy goes off. Grand usually starts and stops several times during the eruption cycle. The cycle finishes with Grand stopping and Turbine and Vent geysers continuing. Grand's eruption, size, and various starts and stops probably makes it the most dramatic geyser in Yellowstone.
Oh, fireworks with water.
Behive Geyser's small cone is misleading. Its small cone acts like a nozzle to project the water to heights of 130 to 180 feet. Although Behive is erratic, it's really impressive if you can catch it. But watch out for the wind shifting. And last, the icon of Yellowstone, Old Faithful, the geyser that draws over 3 million visitors to the park each year. It was first seen in 1870. In the early days of the park, it was often used as a laundry. Can you imagine our park icon, a washing machine? Here we are at another icon of Yellowstone. This is the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. It is another thermal. You say, that looks like a waterfall, but it's actually a thermal. Why is it a thermal? And how was it made? So why do you say, is this canyon a thermal? The reason it's a thermal, it was actually formed by thermal action. During the last ice age, there was a cap of ice on the Yellowstone Basin about 4,000 feet thick. At the end of the last ice age, the water flowed out from the big ice cap, flowed down in this area and other areas, obviously, and soaked into the ground. When it soaked into the ground, it ran into the magma. The hot ground heated it up, brought it up as hot springs. The hot springs dissolved the minerals in the soil, resulting in the yellow and red colors that you see behind me. That action not only gave us the colors that make the canyon so beautiful, but it also softened the rock. So as this 4,000 foot thick ice cap dissolved, it took this canyon and carved the whole thing. The last ice age was over 14,000, 16,000 years ago, so this whole canyon was formed after that. So in a lot less than 14 to 16,000 years, this canyon was formed as opposed to, say, the Grand Canyon, which took millions of years, all because of thermal action. In 1872, Yellowstone National Park was created. It was created to protect the thermals, but in the process, it created an area large enough to be a whole ecosystem. That made it was large enough to support animals that required a lot of area to survive, such as bison, bears, and wolves. Let's go take a look at one of my favorite animals, the animal that brought us to the park to start with, the cutthroat. This is the Yellowstone River. It is the longest undammed river in the United States. But this particular section is special. Down about 10 miles from here is the Yellowstone Falls, 6 feet high. No fish is going to get over that, which has isolated this section between here and the Yellowstone Lake, which is where the Yellowstone River begins. Because of that, the trout that are in here, the cutthroat trout specifically, have formed a unique subspecies known as, get this, the Yellowstone cutthroat. Good. Each year, the Yellowstone cutthroat migrate from anywhere from down in the falls all the way up and spawn right at the mouth of Yellowstone Lake. They're going to run into some trouble. Where are they going to run into some trouble? We're going to find out in just a minute. This is the Lahardy Rapids. This is really the only impediment that the cutthroat trout have that are coming up from downriver, obviously above the falls, to spawn in the lake or in the mouth of the lake. The water is really moving here, and it takes an incredibly strong fish to get through this part. But other fish will try and work their way up the edges. This is also the time of year that the big aquatic bugs called salmon flies come out, and the fish just love them. As the trout work their way up the edges of the river, they look for the slowest water and the smallest jumps. They will then queue up just below the smallest part of the rapids and jump them. Unfortunately, most jumps are not successful, so the trout have to recover their strength and try again, and again. The trout have company on the river. The stop at Lahardy Rapids gives a chance for the predators, like the pelicans here, to catch one of the cutthroat trout as they try and make it past the rapids. The pelicans aren't the trout's only problem. The river otters also feed on the trout. River otters are fast swimmers, and the trout are their favorite food. As the trout migrate to smaller and smaller streams, they can be targets for the bears. The spawning has made the cutthroat trout weak, so they are much easier targets now. Besides pelicans and river otters, there are other critters that eat fish. Eagles and osprey primarily live on a diet of trout. They tend to build large nests at the top of dead trees, like the one you see behind me, somewhere near a body of water. On the left is the juvenile bald eagle. It is June, and the juvenile has not yet learned to fly. Unlike the osprey, the eagle is a scavenger, and here it is helping the ravens to finish off an elk carcass. Apparently, eagles usually drop their load before flying. This one got sidetracked by a dive-bombing osprey.
If I was guessing.
Here he goes. Here he goes.
This is a juvenile osprey calling for food, and right on cue the adult arrives with a small fish. For both the eagle and the osprey, the eggs hatch in late spring and the chicks can leave the nest in midsummer. I think the prettiest bird in the park is the trumpeter swan. They are just so graceful. Unfortunately, their numbers are small and declining.
Long gone are the days when we used to see bears begging at car windows, or when they set up bleachers at the garbage dump in order to be able to watch the bears feeding at the garbage dump. We are no longer the source of the bears' food, so the bears are off elsewhere and it's harder to see them now. But in a big open area like Hayden Valley here, sometimes you see a bear roaming through, just looking for grubs or whatever.
Yeah, way over there, going towards the hill.
Most bear sightings are just a glimpse of the bears walking through the woods or a corner of a meadow.
There he is. Oh, wait, okay.
The elk are great bear watchers. These elk are keeping an eye on this bear about a mile away.
Yeah, Aaron.
If you're really lucky, you can find a bear on a carcass close to the road. This bear found a deer that was hit by a car, and the bear stayed with it for a week, chewing on the carcass, wandering out and swimming, and taking a nap. If the bear stays around, you usually get big traffic jams as people crowd into that one small spot from which you can see the bear. What you don't want is this situation with people close to a grizzly mother with cubs. The mother can be very unpredictable and dangerous. If you think you might be able to get away from a bear by climbing a tree, watch this black bear.
The bison used to roam the American plains in herds of about 30 million. This is the heritage of those bison. The herd at one point in time in Yellowstone was reduced to only about a few dozen. Today, it is up to 3,000. This is the only free-roaming herd of bison in the wild in the lower 48.
These are really big animals. A big bull can weigh in at 2,000 pounds. They seem to be fearless, and at the same time big enough to destroy a person, or even a car. People may stop to look at a bear or an elk, but a bison will just stand in the middle of the road. Bison certainly create the biggest traffic jams in the park. They give birth in May, and by late June and August, the rut starts again. The big bulls roll in the dirt and grunt to display their prowess to the females and other competitors. During this time, they can become easily agitated and very dangerous. The bulls find a female that is close to estrus and guards her, fighting off the other bulls to keep her. The bull stays very close to the female until they mate. Then he moves off to find another female. My favorite time of year is in the fall, when the morning mist on the river reveals an almost magical landscape. This is the time of year that the elk rut starts, and the elk move into the meadows for the rut, and the sound of bulls bugling echoes off the canyon walls. Each bull elk tries to corral his own harem of females. Only the big and strong ones can succeed. The bugling is their way of warning the other bulls to stay away. And in response, it is a challenge from the single bulls. The big bull must control the females or lose a potential mating opportunity. Like the bison, the bull elk sort of go crazy at this time of year, putting all their energy into protecting their chance to mate. These younger bulls are practicing fighting, getting ready for when they are big enough to challenge the older bulls.
Ah, looking for a moose, huh? Well, the willows next to the water on a gorgeous fall day, a great place to look for a moose. Moose are very reclusive and hard to find. Of the large animals in Yellowstone Park, they're probably the hardest to find. There are less than 200 in the entire park, but they're big. A bull moose is about 7 feet tall, or can be 7 feet tall at the shoulder.
A bull moose may be a big animal, but usually hidden in the bushes and the trees. During the rut, a bull moose that has a female is not going to put up with any other males around, including this young one. In addition to willows, moose like shallow lakes and rivers, where they graze on aquatic plants.
Here we go.
The moose population has been substantially reduced in Yellowstone by the loss of good moose forage from the 1988 fires and the reintroduction of the wolves in 1995. Meanwhile, the wolf population has grown from the 31 wolves that were introduced to about 124 today.
There are 5 of them? Or 4?
Although wolf packs cover large parts of Yellowstone, they can most easily be seen in the northern part of the park, in the Lamar Valley. There is a dedicated group of people who love watching the wolves under all weather conditions. These wolf watchers are witnessing a territorial battle between the Druid and the Slough packs. We've been looking at Yellowstone highlights that are close to the road. Now let's take a look at the backcountry.
Of the 3 million people that visit Yellowstone every year, less than 1% leave the road or the boardwalk. Very few venture onto the trails. Trails reveal all kinds of little interesting wonders. We're going to show you a few of them. The first one we're going to go to is Lone Star Geyser, which is right here. This is Lone Star Geyser. It goes off about every 3 hours and can reach heights of 40 feet. It's a really impressive geyser, maybe the biggest in the backcountry. This is Imperial Geyser. It's one of the backcountry geysers, about a 4.5 mile hike from the road. It's a really pretty geyser, and one of its nice advantages is it goes off almost continuously. Except it's stopped now. There we go. You don't have to wait long. None of this old Faithful 90-minute stuff. And on top of that, you get this beautiful emerald pool in front of it.
In the spring, Imperial Geyser comes equipped with this beautiful array of wildflowers, and the water flowing out of Imperial flows down to Spray Geyser. This is Fairy Falls, only about 7/10 of a mile from Imperial Geyser. Fairy Falls is 197 feet tall and one of the tallest falls in the park. The meadows around Fairy Falls Creek are one of the areas that was completely burned by the 1988 fires. Paintbrush and wild bluebells are blooming here. Not too far away is the secret Pocket Basin mud pots. Secret because it's completely unprotected and not listed anywhere. It is the largest mud pot area in the park, at over 0.3 miles long. At its end are some huge mud pots.
This is the 6th group of mud pots in this whole area. This one's enormous. It must be almost 50 feet across.
Next up, Mystic Falls.
Here we are at Mystic Falls. This is one of the shorter hikes that you can get into the backcountry in Yellowstone National Park. But it's this gorgeous springtime view with all the greenery around and the light falling on the falls and all the extra water that you get early in the year.
This is just a small sample of the hundreds of miles of trails available in Yellowstone. As summer fades into fall, the aspens turn their golden color. The mornings are now crisp and cold. The rut is in full force. The animals are preparing for the very cold winter that comes to the Yellowstone region. Some will hibernate, some will migrate, and some will just put on as much weight as they can. With fall, we end our summer season, and we are about to start winter. But that is a story for another time.